Hey guys, welcome back to Library of Wealth. In today's video, Microstrategy CEO and Bitcoin investor Michael Saylor talks about how fast Bitcoin to date is accelerating, and at 340% growth since its inception, there's many reasons why people are wrong about the current cycle that we're in. In times of excitement and difficulty, Saylor remains bullish on Bitcoin. The billionaire is sticking to his guns, believing in and continuing to bet on the king of cryptocurrencies. Despite Bitcoin's setbacks at the end of last year, Bitcoin is still up 340% to date. MicroStrategy bought 4,827 Bitcoins in the first quarter for a total amount of $215 million at an average price of $44,645. The company now owns 129,218 Bitcoins as of March 31st, 2022, with a market value of $5.9 billion, reflecting $1.9 billion of unrealized gains, or nearly 50% appreciation when compared to the original cost basis of their Bitcoin. MicroStrategy says it has booked a total impairment charge of $1.1 billion related to its Bitcoins. Let's listen to Saylor, who stays in for the long run, talks about his outlook for Bitcoin this year.
Bitcoin's the best performing institutional grade asset of the year to date. It's up 344%. And that's an acceleration of 2x over its growth rate for the past decade, which was also the most impressive performance. So I as an aeronautical engineer, this is like going through the speed of sound. If we went any faster, we'd rip the wings off the airplane. Like if you have any experience with a boat or an airplane or an airfoil, there's a certain speed you can get to at which point you just start to rip the wings off or you start to move against the forces of nature. If I said to, you're saying to me, well, we're disappointed. You're up 340% in 12 months. Okay, so loving that, right? I get what you're saying.
Right.
We're disappointed that there aren't 100. We're disappointed that Apple Computer hadn't bought $50 billion of Bitcoin.
Yes.
Right? That's what we're disappointed about.
Yes.
And so I think, first of all, a lot of people, publicly traded companies, have a problem holding the property. And the problem holding the property is either it would take about a year, 6 months to a year, to establish a relationship with a crypto custodian.
Over the previous 2 years, the story of MicroStrategy CEO Michael Saylor actively buying Bitcoins has continued to make headlines. However, according to one claim, Saylor may be selling some of his Bitcoin assets in secret. In a recent thread on Twitter, blockchain analysis appears to reveal that MicroStrategy has been selling some of its Bitcoin holdings. This story has generated quite a commotion on social media for the first time, as Saylor famously stated that he will never sell his Bitcoin stash. If the reports are true, it will be the first time the corporation has sold any of its Bitcoin holdings since adding the cryptocurrency to its balance sheet in August of 2020.
When you go to set up your Coinbase account or a Fidelity account or whatever, if you're publicly traded, you've got armies of lawyers and accountants going through due diligence and compliance check and security check and the like. I mean, bear in mind, most of these companies, most people that trade stocks have been using the same broker for 20 years. Most institutions have been using the same broker for 30 years. So having to actually come up with a new broker, a once in 30-year thing, I think that slows people down. I think the second thing is the FASB accounting treatment of indefinite intangible. It's hostile and prejudicial to a CFO or CEO that has a optically pristine P&L or balance sheet. If I buy $1 billion of Bitcoin, it goes down by 50%, then it goes up by 20. I report to the world that I have 500 million in assets and I had a $500 million operating loss. Even though neither of those things are true, what I really have is 10 billion in assets and a $9 billion investment gain. So I got to sympathize. I mean, the one intelligent pushback from someone as to why I don't buy Bitcoin, it's not the volatility of the asset, it's the optical or the accounting volatility, because 30 years of pristine operations at a company with a perfect P&L and a perfect balance sheet and gross margins that you can predict plus or minus 1% for 8 quarters, that gets totally blown out of the water.
Saylor's strategy of acquiring Bitcoin has diversified into using the proceeds of debt and equity transactions. Here are some of the advantages he talks about, as well as exactly how much liquidity companies are trading.
I think that that's a drag for public entities that are GAAP accounting reliant. And I think the third drag is that there are trillions of dollars, Brett, that by charter and by law and maybe by tax code can't own property. They have to own security, right? The distinction being $1 billion of Bitcoin in an ETF or $1 billion of MicroStrategy stock as a security. $1 billion of a Bitcoin miner is a security. $1 billion of Bitcoin is property. Now, I mean, there's a lot of advantages to owning property outright versus the security, but the disadvantage is if I raise $10 billion from 100 pension funds and I'm an SEC 40 Act investment company and 90% of my portfolio has to be in securities, undoing that would take 3 years and Herculean effort, right? And maybe I lose my investors. I think that one of the impediments has been the lack of securities that offer Bitcoin exposure. I mean, the obvious elephant in the room is the lack of a Bitcoin ETF for the spot market. I don't know, you might have seen Tom Emmer's note to the SEC today, where he basically says, we need an ETF for the spot. That would be a security. Keeping in mind one more observation, if I look at my ticker right now, Marathon is trading at $64 a share. It's a $6.5 billion market cap. And today it traded $1 billion of liquidity. Riot today traded 600 million of liquidity with a market cap north of 3 billion. And then you've got, in rapid succession, you've got Bitfarms, which is $1 billion plus publicly traded miner. You've got Hut 8, that stock has tripled in the past 3 months. It's a $2.5 billion miner. Bit Digital, I could go on. There's about 12.
To date, MicroStrategy and Tesla have taken billion-dollar positions in Bitcoin. Saylor also predicted that as soon as banks were allowed to hold Bitcoin on their balance sheets, everyone will want to buy, no one will want to sell, and no one will be able to afford it.
I think that if you say, well, what's the progress in 12 months? When MicroStrategy did our due diligence, Brett, I couldn't find a single company holding $3 million of Bitcoin on their balance sheet anywhere in the public markets. Couldn't find anybody. And so today we have like 36 companies, and you've got MicroStrategy and Tesla that have taken north of $1 billion positions. You've got Square and Marathon that have purchased, $400 or $500 million worth of Bitcoin on their treasury. You've got a dozen Bitcoin miners. You've got 2 futures ETFs. How would I put this to bed? I would say this, Brett. Like, you remember the chair of the FDIC last week said they're investigating how banks can hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet and what the reserve ratio should be. And I looked at it and I tweeted. I said, when the FDIC finally approves banks to hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet, everybody will want to buy it, nobody will want to sell it, and you won't be able to afford it. So in this particular case, I think the same holds true, which is you're seeing the motion, you're seeing the 350% uptick. You have a lot of obvious liabilities that are holding back Apple and Google and Facebook from buying $50 billion each. I thank my lucky stars for those liabilities. When I was banging away on a computer buying Bitcoin as fast as I could at $9,500 a coin, and I bought $175 million worth of it in like 2 days, hoping to hell no one figured out I was buying it. While I was doing that, I consoled myself with the thought that it took me 3 months to get KYC'd and get the account, and they put me through hell. And if it's that difficult to be able to buy Bitcoin, then I figured that I'd done the work and everybody else was going to come after me and they were going to pay double or triple.
MicroStrategy still has quite a bit of uncollateralized Bitcoin, more than they could contribute in the case that there is a lot of downward volatility. However, Bitcoin would have to fall to $21,000 before they get to a point where there needs to be more margin or more collateral contributors. So they're in a pretty comfortable place where they are right now. What do you think of Saylor's Bitcoin outlook for this year? Comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Library of Wealth. We'll see you in the next video.